Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the music rating, ranking, and reviewing podcast that we like to call Music Meltdown, in which we rate, rank, and review any artist's discography, songs, musical topics, really whatever comes to mind. This episode, I'm dabbling into a far, far more different realm than what I typically cover on the show, doing some hip hop. And not only just hip hop, going into the experimental 2010s realm of hip hop with the group Death Grips. Maybe you wouldn't expect this from my very indie-leaning sounds, but I'm actually a pretty big fan of like this more experimental, this more kind of out there style of music, and I think Death Grips do it in a really cool way. They have to their name, I believe, 8 records that I'm counting here. I am going to be counting Exmilitary. That being said, I am also having the powers that be as the 2 double records as opposed to Jenny Death and the One I Can't Say. That being said, however, let's just get into it. With my least favorite Death Grips record, I think kind of everybody mutually agrees the worst Death Grips record. It's Government Plates. While far from a bad record overall, it's clearly the group's weakest in my opinion. The songs feel somewhat directionless, and despite some strong moments and Ride's memorable performances, and aside from the bookends on this record, it rarely keeps you fully engaged through it. Despite that, it's still rather interesting, and I do appreciate what it goes for. I think that a lot of the actual instrumental passages on here are rather interesting. They just don't quite live up to the heights of the man. It's at 3 stars for me. I think it's a pretty decent record. However, it is the weakest Death Grips album. Going up from here, probably one that's slightly contentious for some people, because I know there are others that love this album. I was a bit let down by it personally, and that's going to be The Powers That Be. This is a good album, but it's the most disappointed I was in a Death Grips record. It's produced greatly. Ride is just vicious. He's crazy across the entire catalog. He's one of my favorite hip-hop frontmen in general because of just how out there and weird his style is. It's so cool. The main issue here just boils down to the songs. In an 18-album song, words. In an 18-track album, rarely does one really stick out to me, which is a shame because I find the musical direction of this really interesting. It's less intense compared to the earlier records, but it still has a bit of that more experimental feeling of Government Plates. But for whatever reason, the tracks themselves just don't really stand out to me. As well, it is long. This one's over an hour long, and while I do like the mood, the vibe, I think it's well produced, well crafted, it's just not a very engaging record to me. I still do think that it's good. I still have it at 3.5, but it's one of the weaker records in my opinion. Next up, I have their most recent up to this point, Year of the Snitch. This and the one following it are going to be really close on my ranking. I'm at 4 stars now. I do really like Death Grips a lot. And it's another interesting divergence for the band. Feeling a bit more scattershot than Bottomless Pit did, but less overtly noisy. This album still has tons going on for it, though. The opener, Death Grips is Online, is just incredible. My main issue is that past that song, I feel like it also lacks like the high points in their career. Like it's filled with really cool drum and synth parts, and Ride per the usual is just fantastic. But it doesn't have like a really knockout song past that. I still think that it's quite good. I still have it at 4 stars, so I still do really enjoy it. However, it does fall near the bottom of the pack for me. Going up from here, at one point I thought that this record was pretty much perfect. I don't really get that now. I still like it a lot. I have no love Deep Web. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, at one point I would have given this like a 10 out of 10, and I'm not really sure why at this point. It probably doesn't help that this is the first time I actually heard Exmilitary, so at this point it feels very much like the third of that style that they're going for. Mind you, everybody's still great on here. Ride is probably as most intense that he would ever be on this record. I just don't think that the songs land as well as they do on Exmilitary or on The Money Store. My favorite is the opener, Come Up and Get Me. And I like Death Grips enough. I love them. I have it at 4 stars, but this one, it's a bit more borderline. Still do love it, though. And my top 3 are all 4.5. I love Death Grips. Number 3, I'm going with Bottomless Pit, one that I had never heard before. This is probably another one of their more intense releases. This record often clips with how much bass and distortion is heavy on it, and I just love that. Ride is intense as hell and just shouting at the top of his lungs on here. The beats are heavy and they're moving just all over the place. The synths are incredible. Spikes, A, and Bottomless Pit were my favorite songs on here. It's just a really great encapsulation of if you like Death Grips, you're going to love this record. I have it at 4.5. Going up from there, Exmilitary. While I'd always known and liked Death Grips, I'd never actually gotten around to Exmilitary before. And it's just great. Death Grips are incredibly eclectic, and on this it feels like a biggest example of a more rocking sound with them, which is really cool. It's more than likely within a lot of the sample choices that they have here, though. Which you can tell anytime that they use them, they're interpolating them in such a way that it just sounds really cool. The drumming is great on here, and MC Ride's frantic, aggressive vocal and lyrical style. It's an acquired taste, but if you can get into it, you're gonna love it. It's easily 4.5 stars. Was really into it. But their best record, in my opinion, wasn't too hard to figure out. It's gotta be The Money Store. I'm at 4.5. I think it's a fantastic record. It's just taking everything that made Ex-Military great and evolving off of it. The electronica elements take a stronger impact. The blaring synths and drum patterns across this record are great. That's not to take away from the killer live drumming on here. MC Ride is the star of the show, though. He has perfect delivery, and lyrically, his blunt and aggressive style suits their music brilliantly. This is basically as great as experimental hip hop is going to get for you, with the only weak moment on here being Punk Weight, which I think the really high synths on that track are just really annoying, which is why I'm only at 4.5 for it. However, I still think that it is just outstanding and would highly suggest people go listen to it. But yeah, do I get why people don't like Death Grips? Absolutely. They are not a band for everybody. They're not for... If you don't like this more experimental sound, you're never going to get into Death Grips. For me, it took a little bit, but I am just fully encapsulated in the sound. I think they are so cool. One of the most interesting bands around today. Here's hoping that they put out some more music sometime soon. That being said, I hope that you enjoyed this discussion, and you have a great one.